The Veltari Dominion had conquered 17 species across 3 galactic arms, and they had never once failed in their mission of expansion and domination, Commander. Kethros stood in his observation chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Conquest and watched the blue planet spinning slowly in the darkness of spaces. 4 eyes studied the world with cold calculation, while his mandibles clicked together in a gesture of mild interest. This is the human homeworld, his intelligence officer reported, bringing up holographic displays of the planet and its surrounding colonies. They call it Earth, and they have spread to 47 other worlds in the past 200 years. Kethros made a dismissive sound. Tell me about their military capabilities. The officer's antennae twitched nervously. They have minimal defensive forces, Commander, and their weapons technology is at least 3 generations behind our own. Their ships are slow, and their armor is weak, and they have never fought a war outside their own solar system. This was music to Kethros' ears. The Veltari had perfected the art of conquest over 10,000 years, and they knew exactly how to break a species. First you studied them and learned their weaknesses, then you exploited those weaknesses until they had no choice but to surrender. Humans, it seemed, had many weaknesses. They were fragile creatures who could only survive in a narrow range of temperatures. They needed to sleep for nearly a third of their short lives. They required constant intake of food and water, and most puzzling of all, they devoted enormous resources to their immature offspring. Explain this to me, Kethros demanded, pointing at data showing human educational facilities and child care centers and hospitals dedicated entirely to young humans. They spend 20 years raising each child to maturity. They build entire institutions around creatures that cannot work or fight or contribute anything useful. This is incredibly inefficient. His science officer stepped forward with an explanation. It appears to be a deep biological and cultural trait. Commander, humans form intense emotional bonds with their young, and they will sacrifice almost anything to protect them. We have observed that even unrelated humans will risk their lives for children they have never met. Kethros' mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his species. Then we have found their weakness. Prepare a strike team for the colony world designated New Geneva. We will take their children and use them as leverage to force humanity's surrender. The raid happened 3 days later on a bright morning when the twin suns of New Geneva filled the sky with golden light. The human colony was home to 50,000 people, and it had a single school complex where 300 children between the ages of 6 and 12 gathered each day to learn. Veltari dropships descended from orbit without warning. They had cloaking technology that human sensors could not detect, and they landed in the fields surrounding the school before anyone knew they were theirs. Soldiers in black armor poured out of the ships carrying weapons that fired paralytic energy beams. Teachers and guards fell unconscious before they could even raise an alarm. The children screamed and ran, but there was nowhere to go within 15 minutes. Every child in the school had been loaded onto the transport ships. Within 30 minutes, the Veltari were gone, leaving behind only unconscious adults and empty classroom scatters. Watched the operation from orbit with satisfaction. Excellent work, he announced to his command crew. Now we wait for the humans to contact us and beg for negotiations. They will offer us whatever we want in exchange for their precious children. He had done this before with other species. The Kos Malari had surrendered 3-star systems for the return of a single diplomatic vessel. The Veltari had given up their entire fleet. Rather than see their breeding pools destroyed, humans would be no different. They would calculate the cost of war against the Veltari, and they would realize they could not win. They would accept whatever terms Kethros offered, because that was what rational species did. He settled into his command chair and waited for the desperate messages to begin. Arriving hours passed, then a full day, then 2 days. The communication channels remained silent. Where are their demands? Kethros asked his communication officer with growing irritation. Where are their diplomats and their negotiators? Why have they not contacted us? The officer checked her instruments with increasing confusion. There is no communication from human space. Commander, no messages, no diplomatic channels. Nothing at all. It is as if they are not even aware we took the children. That was impossible. The Valkyrie had left obvious evidence behind. They had wanted humans to know exactly who had taken there. Offspring Kethers was about to order a provocative strike against a human outpost when his sensor officer made a sound of alarm. Commander, we have lost contact with monitoring Station 7. Before Kethros could respond, another alarm sounded. Station 12 is offline. Station 3 is not responding. Commander, all of our monitoring stations in this sector have gone dark simultaneously. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in those stations were spread across dozens of light years. They had multiple redundant systems and backup power for all of them to fail at exactly the same moment was not a malfunction, it was a message. Ekathoros felt something he had not experienced in his 200 years of military service. Felt the cold touch of uncertainty. Get me a communication link to the High Command. He ordered. Tell them we may have made a miscalculation regarding the humans. Deep in space, far from Valkyrie sensors, a fleet was gathering ships emerged from hidden bases and secret shipyards across human territory. They were not military vessels, because humanity had never built a proper navy. They were mining ships with their drilling lasers recalibrated for combat. They were research vessels, carrying experimental weapons that had never been tested. They were passenger liners with their cargo, holds filled with volunteers who had dropped everything to answer the call, and leading them were the ghost ships. These were vessels that appeared in no registry and had no official designation. They were built in asteroid bases and hidden moons by engineers who had spent decades preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Each one carried enough firepower to crack a planet aboard the command ship. Admiral James Chen reviewed the tactical display with cold fury burning in his chest. His granddaughter was among the taken children. All ships report ready, his executive officer announced. The fleet will reach Valkyrie space in 47 hours. Admiral Chen nodded once. Send word to every human colony. Tell them what has happened. Tell them we are going to bring our children home. He paused and his voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. And tell them that the Valkyrie will learn why. The galaxy should fear us. The message spread across human space at faster than light speeds, and everywhere it went. More ships joined the fleet. More volunteers stepped forward. More weapons were loaded. Humanity was going to war. And heaven help anyone who stood in their way. Ambassador Ithala of the Consortium of Aligned Worlds had served as the diplomatic liaison to humanity for 12 years, and she believed she understood them better than any other alien in the galaxy. She had learned their languages and studied their art and eaten their food. She had attended their festivals and listened to their music, and even tried to understand their strange obsession with keeping small furry animals in their homes. Humans were delightful creatures in her experience. They told jokes and asked about her family and sent medical ships to help other species during plagues and disasters. They shared their technology freely and invited other races to their worlds and treated everyone with kindness and respect. When she received the emergency transmission from the Valkyrie border, she assumed it was some kind of mistake. Ambassador Ithala. The panicked voice of Commander Kethros crackled through the speaker. You must help us negotiate with the humans. We took some of their children as leverage for territorial negotiations. But they have not responded to any of our communications. Instead, they have destroyed every monitoring station in our border regions. Ithala felt her 3 hearts skip a beat. You did what? She asked, certain she had misheard. We took 300 of their immature offspring from a colony world. It is standard practice for establishing dominance over a new species. but the humans are not responding as expected, and we are detecting massive fleet movements toward our space. Ithala closed her eyes and tried to process what she was hearing. The Velthari were fools. They were absolute fools who had no idea what they had done, Commander. She said slowly, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Return those children immediately. Do not wait for negotiations. Do not ask for anything in return. Return them now and pray that the humans show mercy. Kethros made a sound of confusion. I do not understand. The humans are a weak species with inferior technology. Why would we fear them? Why would we surrender our advantage? Ithala thought about everything she knew about humanity. She thought about their history of warfare that stretched back thousands of years. She thought about the weapons they had created and the wars they had fought among themselves. She thought about the fact that they had nearly destroyed their own planet multiple times and somehow survived every catastrophe. And she thought about the elder races, the species who had been traveling among the stars for millions of years and who rarely spoke to younger civilizations. Those ancient beings had welcomed humanity into the galactic community with open arms. They had given humans technology and resources and asked for nothing in return. And they had quietly made sure that no conflict ever touched human space. Ithala had always wondered why. Now she was beginning to understand. Commander, she said, I cannot explain everything to you in time to matter, but I will tell you this much. The HFY were the greatest warriors in the galaxy before they met humanity. They had conquered dozens of worlds and feared nothing in the universe. Do you know what happened when they went to war with humans? No. Kethros admitted. The war lasted 6 days. The HFY surrendered unconditionally and have refused to discuss what happened ever since. They are now humanity's closest allies and most devoted protectors. Whatever broke them, whatever they saw in those 6 days, it changed them forever. There was silence on the other end of the communication. Return the children. Ithala repeated, It is your only hope. The channel closed, and Ithala immediately opened a new one to the human embassy on the consortium. Station Ambassador Sarah Chun appeared on the screen. Ithala had known Sarah for years. She was a kind woman with silver hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She brought pastries to diplomatic meetings and always remembered the names of everyone's children. The woman on the screen looked like Sarah Chun, but her eyes were different. They were empty and cold and filled with something that made Ithala want to look away. Ambassador Ithala, Sarah said in a flat voice that held none of its usual warmth. I assume you have heard what happened. Yes, Ithala replied carefully. The consortium urges restraint in this matter. We can help negotiate for the safe return of the children. We can apply diplomatic pressure to the Velthari. We can. The consortium will stay out of our way. Sarah interrupted. Or they will be moved. Ithala felt a chill run through her body. Ambassador Chun, please, what are you planning to do? Whatever is necessary. Sarah leaned closer to the camera, and Ithala saw something ancient and terrible in her eyes. You have been a good friend to humanity. Ithala, I want you to understand something. We did not build a military because we chose peace. We shared our technology because we wanted to be good neighbors. We helped other species because it was the right thing to do. But we never forgot what we are. We never forgot what our ancestors did to survive on a world that tried to kill them every single day. We never forgot that we are the descendants of persistence hunters who chased prey across continents until it collapsed. From exhaustion, the Velthari think we are weak because we are kind. They are about to learn that kindness is a choice, and we can make a different choice whenever we want. The screen went dark. Ithala sat in silence for a long moment. Then, she began sending urgent messages to every species in the consortium. She warned them to stay clear of Volhurispace. She warned them not to interfere with human fleet movements, and she warned them that the galaxy was about to see something that had not been witnessed in thousands of years. A predator species fully awakened across the galaxy. The human fleet continued to grow. Ships that had been hiding in nebulae and asteroid fields emerged to join the armada. Veterans of 100 different conflicts came out of retirement and put on their uniforms against scientists who had spent decades on peaceful research, remembered the weapons they had designed and never built. And civilians by the millions volunteered for whatever role they could fill. Parents who had children of their own. Grandparents who remembered holding babies in there. Arms teachers and doctors and shopkeepers and farmers, all of them united by a single burning purpose. 300 children had been taken. 300 families were broken, and humanity was going to put them back together no matter what it cost. No matter who stood in the way, the children were coming home on the bridge of his flagship. Admiral Chun received reports from every corner of human space. Admiral, his communications officer reported, "We have received volunteer ships from every human colony. Total fleet strength is now over 12,000 vessels. We are also receiving messages from non-human sources. The HFY warrior fleet is requesting permission to join our formation. The Mallory Science Division is offering technical support. The Consortium Trade Guild is providing supply ships." Chine looked up in surprise. "They want to help us." "Yes, sir. All of them." Their messages say the same thing. Anyone who protects children the way humans do is worth protecting in return. Chun felt something warm break through the cold fury in his chest. Humanity was not alone. They had built friendships across the stars, and now those friends were standing beside them. "Tell them all yes," he ordered. "Tell them we are honored to fight alongside them. And tell them that when this is over, we will never forget what they did for us." The fleet continued toward Valtteri space, and it was no longer a human fleet. It was the fleet of everyone who believed that children should be protected. Everyone who believed that some lines should never be crossed. Everyone who wanted to see the galaxy become a better place. The Valtteri had awakened something they did not understand. Now, they would face the consequences. Commander Kethros had conquered 17 species, and he understood fear as a weapon better than anyone in the Valtteri. Dominion, he knew how to break the spirit of an enemy before the first shot was fired. He knew how to make entire civilizations surrender through terror alone. He had never experienced fear himself. That changed on the third day after the taking. It started with the patrol ships. A squadron of 12 vessels was sent to investigate the destruction of the border monitoring stations. They reported arriving at the first station and finding nothing but debris. Then their communications went silent, not destroyed, just silent, as if they had simply ceased to exist. Kethros sent another squadron. The same thing happened, then another and another. Within 2 days, he had lost 40 ships without a single confirmed contact with enemy forces. The humans were not attacking openly. They were hunting on. The 5th day, the whispers began. Every communication channel in Valtteri space suddenly filled with human voices speaking perfect Valtteri language. They were reciting names, 300 names. The names of every child that had been taken from New Geneva over and over again. Voices came from nowhere and could not be traced or blocked. They filled every ship and station and colony with the soft, persistent sound of human voices speaking the names of stolen children. Valtteri soldiers began to break down. Some refused to leave their quarters. Others demanded to be transferred away from the border. A few took their own lives rather than listen to those voices any longer. Kethros ordered the children moved to the most secure facility in the Dominion. It was a fortress buried deep inside an asteroid in the heart of Valtteri space. No enemy had ever penetrated that far into their territory. No enemy had ever even tried. Surely the children would be safe. There surely the humans could not reach them on. The 7th day, Kethros was in his command center reviewing defensive preparations when the lights flickered. Every screen went dark. For exactly 3 seconds, when power returned, there was a human standing in the center of the room. She was an old woman with gray hair and a lined face and clothes that looked like they belonged in a garden rather than a warship. She should not have been able to get past the guards. She should not have been able to survive in the Valkyrie atmosphere. She should not have been there at all. But there she was, standing calmly among the most dangerous warriors in the Vastis Dominion, looking at Kethros with eyes that held no fear. "I am Emma Sheffield," she said in a quiet voice that somehow filled the entire room. "My granddaughter is one of the children you took. I am here to explain what happens now." Guards raised their weapons, and Kethros held up a claw to stop them. "How did you get in here?" he demanded. Emma smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "I walked." "That is impossible. Your species has a limited understanding of what is possible. You studied us for months before your attack, and you learned almost nothing. You saw that. We are small and soft and short-lived, and you thought that made us weak. You saw that we protect our children, and you thought that made us vulnerable. You were wrong on both counts." She began to walk slowly around the command center, and the guards tracked her with their weapons, but did not fire. "Let me tell you about humanity," Emma continued. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Predators hunted us and diseases ravaged us, and the climate shifted beneath our feet. We should have gone extinct 100 times over, but we did not. Do you know why?" Kethros said nothing. "Because we are the most stubborn creatures in the universe. When something tries to kill us, we do not run away. We figure out how to kill it instead. We walked across continents to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We tamed fire and used it to reshape the world. We domesticated wolves and horses and made them serve us. We invented weapons that could kill from a distance, so nothing could escape us. We reached our moon not because we needed anything there, but because it existed and we wanted it." She stopped directly in front of Kethros and looked up at him. "You have encountered 32 sentient species in your empire. You have conquered 17 of them. You have never met a predator species before. Not a real one. Not like us." Her image flickered, and Kethros realized she was a hologram, but how was the hologram here? How had it bypassed every security system? How was it speaking with such perfect clarity? "You made one mistake in your assessment of humanity," Emma said. "Just one. You thought that our protection of children was a weakness, something to exploit, something to use against us." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow seemed louder than anything Kethros had ever heard. "It is not a weakness. It is the thing that makes us what we are. Every parent becomes a warrior when their child is threatened. Every teacher becomes a guardian. Every stranger who sees a child in danger becomes a weapon. You did not take 300 hostages. You made 300 families into your enemies. And behind those families stand 8 billion humans who feel the same rage." She leaned close to his face, and her eyes burned with cold fire. "You have 48 hours to return every child unharmed. If you do this, we will leave you in peace. We will even help you rebuild whatever we have destroyed. But if you do not, if you harm even one of those children, if even one of them has a bruise when we get them back, we will come for you. We will tear through your fleets like paper. We will crack open your fortress worlds like eggs. We will hunt down every Valkyrie who had any part in this. And when we are done, there will be nothing left of your dominion. Not your ships, not your worlds, not your people, not even the memory that you once existed." The hologram vanished. The command center was silent. Kethros turned to his officers and saw fear in their eyes, real fear, the same fear he felt crawling through his own body. "Prepare our full defensive fleet," he ordered. "Bring every ship we have to protect the homeworld. Contact our allies and demand their assistance." His communications officer made a small sound of distress. "Commander, we have been trying to contact the fleet. None of our ships are responding. None of them." "What do you mean?" Our entire military has gone silent. We cannot reach anyone." Kethros felt the cold grip of terror close around his heart. Somewhere, in the darkness between stars, the human fleet was moving closer and humanity was done talking. Warrior Prime Vethkal of the HFY received the Valthyri's desperate plea for military assistance and felt nothing but grim satisfaction. He remembered the war with humanity. He would never forget it. The HFY had been the most feared warriors in 3 galaxies before they encountered the strange soft creatures from the blue planet called Earth. They had conquered dozens of worlds through strength and skill and absolute brutality. They feared nothing in the universe when their scouts first encountered human ships. They had laughed at the primitive technology and weak defenses. They had declared war expecting an easy victory. The war lasted 6 days. Vethkal had been a young warrior then, and he had commanded a strike force sent to capture a human colony world. His ships had overwhelmed the planetary defenses within hours. His troops had landed expecting to find cowering civilians waiting to surrender. Instead, they found hell. The humans did not surrender. They did not negotiate. They did not retreat. Every single one of them fought, old humans and young humans, males and females. People who had clearly never held a weapon before picked up whatever they could find and threw themselves at trained HFY soldiers. They fought in the streets and buildings and tunnels beneath the city. They set traps and ambushes and fought to the death rather than give up a single inch of ground. And they were creative, so terrifyingly creative. One human scientist figured out how to turn atmospheric processors into chemical weapons in the space of an afternoon. A group of teachers organized the evacuation of children through maintenance tunnels while holding off HFY troops with improvised explosives. A retired military officer rallied civilian volunteers and led a counterattack that pushed Vethkal's forces back 3 kilometers. The HFY won the battle eventually, but they lost 4 times as many soldiers as they expected, and that was before the human military arrived. The ships that appeared in orbit were not warships. They were rescue vessels and science stations and mining platforms, but they had been modified. In the 3 days since the invasion began, the humans had turned peaceful equipment into weapons of terrifying efficiency. Medical lasers became cutting beams that sliced through. HFY armor research sensors became targeting systems of impossible precision. Cargo containers became missile launchers, and the people operating them were not soldiers. They were doctors and scientists and engineers, civilians who had learned to kill in less than a week. The HFY Council looked at the reports and made a decision. If peaceful humans were this dangerous, then they could not afford to let the war continue. They would target human civilian populations. They would destroy cities and kill millions. They would force humanity to surrender through sheer devastation. The humans discovered this plan, and they responded. A single transmission arrived at the HFY homeworld. It contained no threats and no demands. It was simply a document, a detailed strategic analysis showing exactly what humanity would do if the HFY attacked their civilians. The document was not emotional or angry. It was calm and precise and absolutely terrifying. It described how human forces would systematically dismantle every HFY world, every station and colony and outpost, every ship and factory and breeding ground. It included timelines and resource calculations and casualty estimates. It explained that humanity would not stop until the HFY were extinct, not defeated, extinct, and the most horrifying part was the final section. It showed that humanity had the capability to do everything they described. They had been building weapons in secret for decades, ships and bombs and devices that defied understanding. They had never used them because they chose peace, but they could use them whenever they wanted. The HFY surrendered unconditionally. Within hours, now Vethkal composed his response to the Valthyri request for alliance. "You ask me to stand against humanity," he wrote. "I must decline. We fought them once and we lost. We lost not because they were stronger, but because they would not stop. They would not give up. They would not accept defeat. Every time we thought we had won, they found another way to fight. And the entire time they were holding back. The forces that broke our armada were not their military. They were emergency response teams, scientists and doctors and rescue workers with improvised weapons. We never saw their real military because we surrendered before they deployed it. You have done something far worse than we did. We only attacked their colonies. You took their children. I cannot imagine what they will do to you, but I know it will be thorough. Return the children now. Return them unharmed and beg for mercy. It is your only chance. The Veltari High Command received this message and rejected it. They were proud and arrogant and could not believe that any species could truly threaten them. They gathered their entire fleet around their homeworld. Thousands of ships formed a defensive sphere that should have been impenetrable. They activated every weapon platform and defense satellite in their system. They prepared for the greatest battle in their history. The human fleet arrived 12 hours later. They emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, and they kept coming ship after ship after ship. The tactical displays on every Veltari vessel filled with contacts. Until the computers could no longer count them all, Commander Kethros stared at the screen in disbelief. This cannot be their full force, he said. They could not have built so many ships. They did not build all of them. His intelligence officer replied in a shaking voice. Commander, those ships are not all human. I am detecting Ithkai vessels and Malori vessels and consortium trade ships. There are warships from species we have never even encountered. They all came to help the humans. Kethros felt his legs weaken beneath him. Why? Why would so many species join them? Why would anyone risk war with us for the sake of human children? The answer came from the communication system as a human voice broadcast across all channels. This is Admiral James, Chun of the United Human Fleet. We have come for our children. Stand down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Any harm to the children will be punished without mercy. You have 5 minutes to respond. Kethros looked at his officers. He looked at the tactical display, showing the impossible armada surrounding his world. He thought about the Ithkai and how they had surrendered after 6 days. He thought about Emma Sheffield and her promise to leave nothing behind. He thought about 300 human children in a fortress deep inside the asteroid belt, and he made his choice. All ships stand down. He ordered, lower our weapons and open our hangar bays. Tell them where the children are. Tell them we surrender. His officers rushed to obey. The great Veltari dominion that had conquered 17 species fell without a single shot being fired. They had finally met something they could not defeat, not through strength or cunning or terror. They had met a species that would never stop, a species that would cross the galaxy and burn everything in their path, a species that would unite the stars against a common enemy, all for the sake of 300 children. The humans had won before the battle even began. Captain Maria Santos led her ground team through the shattered gates of the Veltari detention facility, with her heart pounding in her chest. The asteroid fortress had been designed to withstand anything. Its walls were 3 meters thick and reinforced with materials that could survive a nuclear blast. Its defense systems could have held off an army for months, but the Veltari guards had abandoned their posts the moment the surrender order came through. They had thrown down their weapons and fled into the deeper tunnels. They had not even tried to use the children as hostages. Maria understood why. She had seen the human fleet filling the sky above the Veltari homeworld. She had heard the broadcasts from dozens of alien species pledging their support. She had felt the cold fury radiating from every human soldier in the assault force. The Veltari had realized at last what they were facing. They had understood that harming those children would bring a vengeance beyond anything they could imagine. So they ran. Maria moved through empty corridors with her squad spread out behind her. There, Boots echoed on the metal floors as they searched room after room. "Captain," her scanner operator called out, "I'm detecting 307 life signs in the central chamber." 307. We only had reports of 300 children. The extra 7 must be teachers and staff who were taken along. With them, Maria felt a surge of hope. If the numbers matched, then maybe everyone was still alive. Maybe they had all survived this nightmare. She quickened her pace through the final corridor and stopped at a massive door that had been sealed with Valkyrie security codes. Her tech specialist went to work on the lock while Maria tried to control her breathing. Her daughter was behind that door. Her little girl, Elena, who loved horses and hated vegetables and always asked for one more bedtime story. She had not slept in days. She had barely eaten. All she could think about was holding her daughter again. The door slid open. Central chamber was huge and cold and filled with makeshift beds and scattered supplies. And there in the middle of it all were the children, 300 human children huddled together in groups. Some were crying, some were sleeping, some were just staring at the walls with empty eyes. But they were alive. They were all alive. A small boy near the front saw the human soldiers, and his face crumpled with relief. "They came," he whispered. "They really came for us." That whisper spread through the room like a wave. Children began to stand and point and cry out in recognition. Some of them ran toward the soldiers with their arms outstretched. Others burst into tears where they stood. The teachers who had been taken with them wept openly as they realized the nightmare was finally over. Maria scanned the crowd desperately, looking for one face. Then she saw her. Elena was in the back of the room, sitting with her arms wrapped around a younger girl who was crying into her shoulder. Even in the middle of her own fear, she was taking care of someone else. Maria ran. She pushed through the crowd of children without caring about protocol or procedure. She dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms and held her so tight she could feel both their hearts beating. "Mama," Elena whispered. "Mama, you found me. I will always find you," Maria said through her tears. "No matter where you are, no matter how far away, I will always come for you." Around them, the other soldiers were reuniting with their own children and nieces and nephews and students. Grandparents who had traveled across the galaxy embraced grandchildren they feared they would never see again. Friends found each other and cried together. Even soldiers who had no personal connection to any of the children found themselves weeping at the sight of so many families being made whole. Admiral Chun arrived an hour later to oversee the evacuation. He walked through the chamber and looked at the children being loaded onto medical shuttles. He saw the relief and joy on their faces. He saw the parents who refused to let go of their children, even for a moment. He felt the cold fury that had driven him across the stars begin to fade. They had done it. They had brought the children home. "Admiral," his aide reported, "the Consortium Council is requesting a meeting to discuss the future of Valkyrie space." Chun nodded slowly. "Tell them I will be there shortly. But first, I need a moment." He found a quiet corner of the facility and sat down heavily on a storage container. The weight of the past week pressed down on him, and he let himself feel it for the first time. He had been prepared to destroy an entire civilization. He had been ready to order the deaths of millions, if that was what it took. He had become something terrible in service of something precious, and now he had to figure out how to become human again. A small hand touched his arm. He looked up to find a young girl with dark hair and serious eyes standing beside him. "Are you sad?" she asked. "A little," he admitted. "Why?" "Because I was so angry, and being that angry hurt." The girl nodded like she understood completely. "I was angry too," she said. "The aliens were mean and scary, and I wanted to hurt them. But then I remembered what my mom always says. Being angry is like holding a hot rock. It burns you more than anyone else. Your mother sounds very wise. She is. Can I sit with you until you feel better?" Chun looked at this child who had been through something no child should ever experience. She had been taken from her home and held captive by aliens for days, and now she was comforting him. "Yes," he said softly. "I would like that very much." They sat together in silence while the evacuation continued around them. 6 months later, Ambassador Ithaela submitted her final report on the incident to the Consortium Council. The Velthari Dominion had been dissolved, their military was dismantled, and their leadership tried for crimes against sentient beings. Their worlds were placed under Consortium supervision to ensure they could never threaten anyone again, but humanity had not destroyed them. Once the children were safe, the human war machine had simply stopped. The ships that could have cracked planets became relief vessels, carrying food and medicine. The soldiers who had been ready to kill became workers helping to rebuild. The scientists who had designed weapons turned their skills to creating better shelters and power systems. Humanity helped the Velthari people, even as they punished the Velthari government. They built schools and hospitals on Velthari worlds. They made sure no Velthari child went hungry during the transition. They showed mercy to a species that had shown them none. When asked why, Ambassador Chun had given a simple answer. "They took our children to hurt us. We take care of their children to show them a better way. We will not become monsters to defeat monsters. That is not who we are." Ithala added a final note to her report. It was a warning for any species that might read the document in years to come. Humanity is not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the most advanced or the oldest or the most numerous, but they are the most dangerous, not because they are good at violence, but because they are good at caring about things worth fighting for. They have shown us that kindness and mercy are not weaknesses. They are choices that strong species make because they can afford to. Humanity can be the best friend you ever have, or the worst enemy you can imagine. The choice is yours. But whatever you do, whatever else you take from this report, remember one thing above all: do not harm their children. Do not harm any children in their presence. They considered the protection of the young to be sacred, and they will burn the galaxy to ash before they let that duty go unfulfilled. We are fortunate they are our allies. Let us make sure we remain worthy of that honor. The report was distributed to every species in the consortium. It was translated into 1,000 languages and stored in 1,000,000 databases, and for generations to come it served as a reminder humanity would always protect the children. No matter what it cost, no matter who stood in the way, the children would always come home.